Hello everyone, nubkeks here and welcome back to Nub Raids, and today I'm going to be breaking down what are the chances to pull the faction unity champion that you want. I was actually, in my head yesterday, I was thinking this was a progressive chance event and you could pick your champion. I'm so used to that, but of course this is a triple 10x event, right? Triple 10x where all three of these faction unities are in the 10x pool. And tomorrow we've got the other three, and tomorrow's the big one because TEOX is in there, which is huge. What are your chances to get any of the faction unity? What are your chances to get TEOX specifically? We're going to break that down today. First of all, let's take a look at this Summon Rush event. So here we go. This is our bonus Summon Rush, but it does have these hammer points in there. So if you care about the Thor Soul, which you probably should be considering these hammer points. Remember, you can skip 250. How many hammer points are in here? 25, 75, 100. There are 200 points in here total. So you can skip this event if you want. You can entirely skip it and you will be fine, but you will only have 50 points remaining for you to skip. What other events are likely to come? Well, we actually have, if we go to the event tab over here, we actually have more information now than we did yesterday. So first of all, I think the big thing is there's now confirmed to be a champion chase tournament at the weekend. So, this is possibly primals, possibly ancients would be the two most likely. It's much harder to predict these nowadays because they do mix it up a bit. It's sort of due to be ancients, but they throw in primals every now and then, especially between fusions. Never primals during a fusion, but between fusions, yes. Though we did have that very recently, more likely to be a ways away. So let's expect it to be ancients. That's not too bad. It does actually become fairly likely, I would say, that the next weekend, which is, we know that this Thor fusion, or sorry, the Thor fusion, the Titan event ends, I believe, on the 1st, on that Tuesday. Pretty darn likely that we have the Deck of Fate next weekend. And it does end up being quite a strong trap then for people. You've got very tempting Summon Rush at Faction Unity Champions, an extra legendary event right now. Champion Chase with Ancients, so you might end up going, okay, well, I want the extra legendary. I'll do Summon Rush. And Ancient Shards, Champion Chase, pretty easy, actually. That's definitely, I'll do that. Great. And then, Deck of Fate for Freya. Well, I want Freya, so I got to pull all the Deck of Fate, and you end up getting too many Titan event points. And too many Titan event points does nothing for you. So, yeah, like that's just something for you to be aware of and to consider and to watch out for, essentially. But here we are. So look, in terms of all of these, I'll put this in for your 25 points at 1,000, 25 fragments. So 2 sacreds for 25 points. Easy to get, but only 25 points. Not really very valuable at all. 5 sacreds for 25 fragments. 6 sacreds for 75. That seems, and then you also need to do an extra 200 points, but that's not too bad either. That's a relatively decent stopping point where you're grabbing 100 of the fragments, which is 100 of the points, which is half of them. If you go a bit further to 9 sacreds, you get another 100 points, which again could leave you open to skipping multiple events later on. And then the final 25 fragments for the Thor fusion are at 5,500. There are some decent rewards, like you go 750 beyond that for a legendary tome, and then another 600 for a mythical skill tome. That's not bad. And then, of course, you go all the way up to these double mythicals at the top. So yeah, you've got all of that going on. Now, let's go back to our chances for this. So we have this triple 10x event, but we also have an extra legendary. If you summon one, you get a second one as a bonus. So how does this actually work out? Well, I didn't bother going through and counting exactly how many legendaries there are from Sacreds. I said there's probably about 200. So, which I think is pretty close, honestly. So the numbers might be slightly different. I'll show you my calculation, so you can redo them if you want to count all the legendaries yourself, or someone has that figure. But this is a fairly good rule of thumb. So in a regular event, you'd have about a 0.5% chance to get the legendary you want. That's assuming there's 200 in the pool, which I think is, like I said, fairly close. In a single 10x event, it basically adds an extra 9 copies of that champion. So there's, 10 times as many copies as one. But the deck of cards, as it were, if you imagine it's a deck of 200 cards, there's now 9 extra cards in there. So it's not quite like 10 times as likely, really would be a 5% chance. It's slightly worse than that. It's 4.8. That's a single 10x event. If you get a legendary, it would be a 4.8. That it would be the one that you would want. That's assuming that there's 200 potential legendaries in the pool, which, like I said, might be slightly inaccurate, but I think this is accurate enough to give you a good ballpark figure. Because like, do people, are you really gonna like like would a 0.1% or 0.2% difference really make a difference to what you're gonna do? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. In a double 10x event, so if there's 2 champions in the pool, you have a 9.2% chance to get one of those champions. One of them. So there we are. In a triple 10x event, you have a 13.2% chance to get at least one of them. So your chance to get the particular one that you want is actually a little bit lower, right? So in a single 10, let's say you go in, let's say an event like this, and let's ignore the extra legendary for a second. Let's say it's like this, and you say, I want Fina, and I strongly do not want the other two for whatever reason. But I really only want her. You are slightly better off going for her in a single 10x event than in the triple, because if you divide 13.2 by 3, it's not as much as 4.8. I don't know what it is, like 4.4 point, I don't know, 7 or 4.8 or something. Sorry, 4.27. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. 4.0, 4.08 maybe. Maths live is always a bad idea. Anyway, you get the gist. You get the gist. Because the deck of cards gets sort of bigger, and if you don't care about the 10x ones, you're basically, if you're only going for a single, you're basically going for 10 out of 227 instead of the 10 out of 209. What I'm trying to say. There we go. Now, in this event, the double legendary event, I am also fairly sure that you cannot get the same legendary twice in a row. So it becomes a bit different. So if we work out our chances to not get TEOX, that's the way to do it. So we're going in with this full 227. 217 times out of 227, we're not getting TEOX when it's a legendary. Now, the second time it happens, actually, that's this accurate? Actually, maybe not, because I've taken out 10. But if you got a legendary that was, actually, so this is actually not fully accurate. That's actually tricky, because if you got like a random legendary, not one of these, it would only reduce the pool to 226. It would remove that one legendary from the pool. If you get one of these faction unities, let's say you're going for TEOX, but you get Falmond instead, it could go down to 217. So actually, maybe I made a bit of a mistake there, because you're actually, that becomes difficult. Roughly, let's say 91%. Maybe let's ignore this. Let's say it's more like a 92% chance not to get TEOX. Pretty high not to get TEOX. That's pulling twice. So about 8.4. Again, let's assume that this number's not quite as generous. So maybe like 8.2, or think of it as like an 8% chance not to get TEOX. Or if you consider, I might have overestimated the size of the legendary pool anyway. These numbers might, funny enough, end up being correct, which is amusing. Yeah, so you're looking at about when you get a legendary, let's say rough rule of thumb, 8% chance to get TEOX is a good rule of thumb. You are way more likely not to get him in this event. Now, to get any of the faction unities is much more likely, right? You're basically 3 times as likely, is the long story short. But to get no faction unities, be the 197 by this. In fact, this should probably be 196 by 226, which would change it slightly, but nowhere near an amount that would matter. You're roughly about 75% chance to get none of them, and roughly about a 25% chance to get at least one. So it's actually not too bad. I think that's sort of the key thing. Like, you go in tomorrow, and it is TEOX, it is Bollant, and it is Vizug. So you get Vizug, TEOX is in there, and Bollant is in there. I'm figuring it's if you get a legendary and you trigger the double legendary event, the extra legendary event, I think it's about, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it should be about a 25% chance that one of them, at least, is a faction unity. So 3 out of 4 of you will get none. 1 out of 4 of you will get at least one. if you go the whole way, right? Enough to trigger the extra legendary, which is pretty decent, but you've no control over what it is. It's again like whatever. Let's say it's about 24% chance to get one of them. You've got about an 8% chance that it's the specific one that you want. Here's an interesting comparison as well, which is if it was an extra legendary single 10x event, it would be like this. So you'd have the 90.6% chance not to get the TEOX, so 9.4% chance to get the TEOX. So you can see if we had the double legendary event with only a single 10x champion, again, you get the gist, really. You get the gist, which is when there's only a single 10x champion, your chance to get that champion is a little bit better than it is when there's multiple 10x champions, because they're sort of floating the pool a little bit. And if you really don't want the other ones, it's bad. But I think in a situation like this, where you probably don't have any of the faction unities, let's be real, the fact that you can walk away with at least one makes it actually fairly decent. So yeah, what am I going to do then? And again, if anyone works out like the full proper detail maths on that, like I said, I think this is slightly incorrect. I think, like I said, I think it's close enough to get a ballpark figure. And it's not like we're going to go from around 8.4% chance to like 20%. It's not going to change anywhere near that much. It's all going to be around the, 8, maybe 9, maybe 7%. Probably more like 8, somewhere between 8 and 9% chance to get them, roughly speaking, which, yeah, it's more than good enough for a ballpark. What I will do, I have right now 31 sacreds. It actually works out reasonably well for me going back up to this. I could do the 11 sacreds. I don't know. It becomes tempting to keep on going then, because after 11 sacreds, that's when you trigger the mercy system. So it does become honestly very tempting to keep pulling, especially because, even this low, let's say 8% chance to get TEOX is pretty low, but TEOX is so unbelievably good. This is, for a free to play, a low spender, incredibly good chance to get him. He only, other than these 10x events, the only time you can get him is in summon pools, which again, the only real way to, you get a couple of pulls for free, but you got to spend money. So like for free to play especially, this is sort of like your only option about the shards you've saved up for so long. The question of, is it worth that gamble? I might pull, now let's say if I get a legendary early, I can stop quite happily at the 100 points pretty much. Okay, I'll go grab all of these points. So I've got all the Titan points, so I'm good to go. Yeah, because I think if you're going for the 75 points for 6 sacreds plus a little bit extra, you might as well go the whole way to the 9 sacreds. Sort of my thought. When you've got 31, I think that's a good idea. So I will probably do this and grab all the things. And if I don't hit a legendary in that time, I will certainly be tempted to go further. For me, I could probably pretty reasonably go up to this mythical skill tome, which is quite juicy, and grab the mythical skill tome and feel pretty good about it. And like I said, I've got a lot of voids. I do have some primals, and I have the capability, the willingness to spend as well, if needs be, to secure a deck of fate. So I have that luxury. If you've got far fewer shards, it becomes, of course, a more difficult question, and you can figure out what you value. And bearing in mind what I said, that it's pretty likely to have, say, we would guess it's Ancients for Champion Chase this weekend, and then you would guess it's a Deck of Fate the next weekend. And the reality, by the way, with the Deck of Fate is you need to max it out. If you're relying on the Deck of Fate points, you need to max that thing out, which is probably like 20 sacreds, I would guess. If it is a Deck of Fate involving shards, you would need like 20 sacreds. And like, you can't do half of the Deck of Fate. Basically, the way that Deck of Fates work, you really have to do 95% of it to have a good chance, like a proper chance to get all the fragments, right? So that's something I watch out for. Getting Titan points out of a Deck of Fate is extremely risky. You basically have to go the whole way unless you're obnoxiously lucky. Like, I mean, at least 50% of people, if not more, maybe it's at least 60% of people would have to pull to the last like 2 slots of the Deck of Fate to get the points. So it's pretty rough. That's sort of my thoughts. If I'm low on shards and I care about this, honestly, this might be your better, safer bet. And to skip the Freya thing, if you've got like 20 sacreds in the bank, it might be like, let's say it's fairly likely it's Deck of Fate, not this weekend, but next weekend. Do that, do the Champion Chase, and skip this event. If you're lower on shards, you want to secure it nice and early and safe, this is the one to go for. And if you care about, faction unities, which are really good for TEOX, I know it's a tough one. So yeah, like I feel like today is overall, but with the faction unities, I think these three are all very solid, honestly. I think that these three are better as a group than the three tomorrow. I've got Vizig, and I think Vizig is probably the worst one, unfortunately. Vizig's in there. I think TEOX is the best, which sort of counters it out. And I do think Bolland is he's decent, actually. He's a solid arena champion. Solid for arena and very, very strong for siege, for any skinwalker rooms, especially with Marius. Got him good with Uko. Not bad with the mythicals. I think that overall, I would say the package today is better, but TEOX probably better individually than all three of these combined. I don't know. That's probably my thoughts. Stuff to say. But there you go. That's sort of what's going on. Let me know, what are you going to do at this event? Hopefully this was helpful to you, breaking down some of the chances. Yeah, I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.